Jake Mitchell never expected to fight a fake HOA until they tried to destroy his home. First, threats and bogus fines. Then, vandalism. But when his cameras caught them pouring gasoline on his fence, he knew it was war. So he set a trap, one that would expose them for good. What happened next? They had no idea who they were messing with. But let's start from the beginning. I had always heard horror stories about HOAs, but I never imagined I'd be at war with one, especially a fake one. My name is Jake Mitchell. I live in a quiet Texas neighborhood where people keep to themselves, or so I thought. It started with a letter. No return address, just a plain white envelope stuffed into my mailbox. Your property is in violation of HOA regulations. Failure to comply will result in penalties. The problem? My neighborhood didn't even have an HOA. I almost laughed. A scam, an obvious one. But the next day, 2 men showed up at my door in cheap navy blue uniforms, HOA compliance officer stitched on their shirts like something off a knockoff badge. The leader, Brian Carter, as he called himself, was a middle-aged man with a gut straining against his belt and an arrogance that stank worse than his cheap cologne. His partner, a wiry man with a rat-like face, just stood there grinning. Brian flipped through some flimsy paperwork. "We've received multiple complaints," he said. "Your fence is not up to HOA standards. You have 1 week to fix it, or there will be consequences." I told them to get lost. That was a mistake. The next morning, my mailbox was smashed. A few hours later, I found my tires slashed. I checked my security cameras. That's when I saw them. Brian and his rat-faced sidekick standing in my backyard with a red gas canister. They poured gasoline along my fence, the wood soaking up the liquid like a death sentence. One of them pulled out a lighter. But before they could strike, my floodlights blasted on. They froze, looked right into the camera, then bolted into the night. My heart hammered. This wasn't some lazy extortion scam. This was personal. I reported them to the police. They didn't care. Without proof of them actually committing a crime, there's not much we can do, the officer said, barely looking up from his desk. I pulled up the footage. 2 men dousing my fence in gasoline, holding a lighter, caught in the act. The officer sighed, scratched his head. "We'll look into it." That was it. No urgency, no follow-up, just another empty promise. I wasn't about to sit around waiting for these crooks to finish what they started. So I did what the cops wouldn't. I started digging. A few phone calls, a little research, and suddenly Brian Carter didn't exist. His real name? Brandon Cole. And his rat-faced partner? Travis Malone. They had been running their fake HOA scam for years, hitting different neighborhoods, sending bogus violation notices, showing up in cheap uniforms to shake people down. Some paid out of fear, others refused, and their homes got vandalized. They'd been at this for a long time, and the worst part? No one had ever fought back. I wasn't about to be the first victim who rolled over. So that night, I got to work. I set up hidden cameras, ones they wouldn't see. My old security system had blind spots, but now I had eyes everywhere. Then I set a trap. I printed one of their fake HOA fine notices, stuffed an envelope full of blank paper, and taped it to my front door. A perfect, tempting target. If they were desperate enough, they'd take the bait. And sure enough, they did. At 2 a.m., my motion detectors went off. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the camera feed, and there they were. Brian, gripping a crowbar. Travis, clutching a red gas canister. They weren't here for money anymore. They were here to burn me out. I barely had time to think. I dialed 911, barked my address, then grabbed the baseball bat from my hallway. No more waiting, no more running. I stormed outside. "You want to play HOA, huh?" My voice was low, steady, dangerous. "Let's play." Travis froze. His grip on the gas can tightened. Then, he bolted. Coward. Brian? He wasn't running. He charged. The crowbar swung, a flash of rusted steel in the moonlight. I sidestepped, fast. The metal whistled past my head. And then, crack. My bat connected with his ribs, hard. A wet gasp escaped his lips as he collapsed to his knees, clutching his side. His breath came out in short, ragged bursts. He wasn't getting up. Then, the sound I'd been waiting for. Sirens. Blue and red lights flashed across the street. Travis tried to run, but the cops were faster. They tackled him, face first, into the pavement. Brian groaned, still hunched over. A second later, an officer had him pinned, cuffs locking around his wrists. And then, the best part. The evidence. The footage of them taking the fake payment. The vandalism. The arson attempt. All of it. Neatly saved. Emailed to every local news station. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I rolled over, still sore from the night before, and grabbed it off the nightstand. News alerts, messages, voicemails. I blinked the sleep from my eyes and opened the first notification. Fake HOA scammers arrested in vigilante sting operation. I exhaled slowly, letting the words sink in. Damn, that felt good. I scrolled through the article. Brian and Travis, charged with fraud, vandalism, attempted arson, and trespassing. Their mugshots stared back at me. Brian's face twisted in pain, Travis looking like a deer in headlights. Turns out, they weren't just targeting my neighborhood. The cops uncovered dozens of victims. Homeowners bullied into paying bogus HOA fines, others who had their cars keyed, mail stolen, porches vandalized. Most were too scared to fight back. Some had even moved just to escape them. I was the first to expose them, the first to hit back. And people noticed. By the time I stepped outside, the neighborhood had changed. No longer quiet, no longer distant. People who'd barely spoken to me before were waiting at my doorstep, coffee cups in hand, nodding in respect. Good work, man. Glad someone finally stood up to them. We should have done something sooner. They weren't just grateful. They were angry. Years of fear of dealing with these crooks, and no one had stopped them until now. Then came the best part. A few neighbors started a fundraiser, money to fix the damages. Within hours, donations rolled in. Not just from my street, but from surrounding neighborhoods, people who had been targeted but never fought back. I didn't ask for it. I didn't expect it. But damn, it felt good knowing that for once the good guys won. And just when I thought it couldn't get better, the real estate agency that owned most of the properties got involved. Apparently, Brian and Travis had scammed tenants, forged documents, even lied about property rules. They had been running their fake HOA scheme on properties they didn't even own. So the agency did what I couldn't. They sued. And not just for fraud, for extortion. Legal experts weighed in. Brian and Travis weren't just facing a slap on the wrist. They were looking at serious financial ruin and possible felony charges. By noon, their story had spread beyond local news. Bigger outlets picked it up. People started sharing it online. The comment sections tore them apart. These guys deserve every bit of punishment coming their way. Fake HOA? That's a new low? Imagine getting your ass handed to you by a homeowner with a bat. Embarrassing. I spent the day watching their entire operation crumble, and by nightfall, I slept like a king. 2 criminals. Gone. Their scam. Dead. Justice. Served.